So back in July, when Barnes & Noble was having their 50% off Criterion sale, I bought 6 titles, and since then I have thoroughly watched all of these. Watched all the films, watched all the supplements. I just may not have watched the film again with the commentary, and may not have read the booklet in each of them. And then also, it is now November, and the Criterion sale has once again started at Barnes & Noble, and then I got one title, which now I had already seen this before, but now I've rewatched it and watched all the supplements on this, and so now I'm going to talk about them. This is probably going to be multiple parts. I know I'm not going to be able to talk about these 7 films in one video. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 parts. So I'm just going to go in spine number order because that's the way that I had them stacked. So first, I'm going to talk about The Silence of the Lambs, which is spine number 13 from 1991, directed by Jonathan Demme. And this is one that I probably have the most to say about, or like the most feelings towards, at least. This was a rewatch for me, but I hadn't seen it in a really long time. Like sometime in high school, I think, but I'm really not sure. It could have been middle school. Yeah, I'm just not sure. And it's really bothering me, though, actually, that I can't place when it was that I first watched this film. And I would also like to mention that I really love this cover, this design. And when I was at Barnes & Noble, I wasn't even planning on getting this title, but then I saw it in person, and I was like, I have to get it. And so I did. I'm not going to hold it up the entire time, though. So my memory of this, my first experience with this film, is that I didn't like it. I thought it was fine, but for me, The Silence of the Lambs is one of those titles that growing up, I had heard a lot, and so I knew that it was critically acclaimed in some way, or had a solid following. Many people loved it or thought it was a great film. So going into it, I had certain expectations. I think also the genre of it being a horror movie also influenced my feelings on it, because I thought that there would be more to it, but it's definitely more of a detective story and an investigation. So that was what I remember from the first time that I watched it, and I have no idea what I was thinking. Because this time around, I loved it, and I immediately recognized that it was in the way that it's filmed. The direction of it is a style that I really like, and so I don't understand how I didn't even pick up on these things at the time of first watching it. I just don't even know. So one of the common framing and direction in this film is to have close-ups and like this close. I'm not going to get close to the camera, but really close and directly straight at the camera. And I love that. I notice it with Wes Anderson films the most, but also it's something that Stanley Kubrick did a lot, and I've noticed it in some Ingmar Bergman films. But specifically when I was in middle school and I watched a Wes Anderson film, I don't think I realized how much I like his style until I watched a film that wasn't his afterwards, if that makes sense. And I was I was having problems with it because I really don't like over the shoulder shots, and that's so common. Why do we have to see a little triangle of someone's shoulder in a movie? It's just not necessary. And I really like centered framing and close-ups, and this film is full of it, and I love it. And so that was something that I noticed immediately. I also think it helps us to understand the characters because we can more clearly see what they're thinking and feeling. Obviously, in particular, Clarice, you can tell when she is feeling a certain way, but she's trying to put on a facade and hide her true feelings, especially in front of Hannibal Lecter. I think that it helps us to become closer to the characters, and again, of course, Clarice in particular, because she's the main character and she's the main protagonist. And I think that she's a really relatable character because of how how committed she is and how vulnerable she is. I also like the emphasis of her being like one of the only female characters in the movie. The other ones are the other like FBI agent or like in training FBI agent and who's her friend, which I'm so glad. I'm so glad that the other female character, they're like friends and it's not like, oh, she's the only other girl here, now we're competition, because that's just done way too much and is not necessary. So there was that girl who I don't know if she has a name. I don't remember her name. And then, of course, the other female characters are the victims of Buffalo Bill. But I was starting to say that because she's a female in a man's world, there's a lot of male agents and a lot of male detectives and officers and such. And Jodie Foster is like already a petite person, and then they cast like all these bigger guys to emphasize like how small she is and that she is a woman. In particular, I was going to mention that I recently watched Daisuke Beppu's like comments on The Silence of the Lambs, because he's going through all the films in the Criterion collection. He's just started, and so because The Silence of the Lambs is an early spine number, that's the order that he's going in. And he also mentioned the elevator scene where she gets into the elevator and it's just full of these like other guys who are like way taller than her. And I think she's like 5'3" or 2, I think she said in one of the interviews. I love how many supplements are on this edition. I immediately, like, I think later that night, it could have been the night afterwards, but I really think the same night that I watched it again, like this rewatch of after buying this, I immediately watched it again and watched it with the audio commentary. And then when the movie was over again, I just went through all the supplements, and I liked learning about the way that the film was made and knowing that like Jonathan Demme I'm not like that familiar with his other films, and so knowing that he definitely wasn't the kind of director that would be considered for the film, and that Jodie Foster wasn't like the first choice to play Clarice. I'm so glad that they are the people who ended up getting the job, because I wouldn't want like one thing to be changed about the way I wouldn't want anything to be changed, but like upon saying that, there is one thing that I wish was just like clarified a little bit, and this is something I'll link Daisuke's video in the description, but also I probably more thoroughly and better written, I wrote a comment, and he replied, and then I replied again, and then he replied again, and it just made me think of like other things in the film. And I'm just mentioning the video because it was a good video. I liked what he said, and then also I had like a response to it that is probably better than like that might be better than what I'm saying right now, because sometimes I'm just better at writing comments, which I mention like way too often. But honestly, just don't stop this video, but like go to that video and read my comment. But the one thing that I think that I had a problem with, and I immediately saw it when I was watching the film, is the representation of Buffalo Bill as a transsexual. But it's not clear enough that he thinks he's a transsexual, but he's not. And especially with Buffalo Bill being a character that's a kidnapper and killer and is disturbed, that's not the kind of representation that the LGBTQIA plus community wants. Of course, obviously nobody wants that kind of character to be someone well known as part of the community, and he's not. Buffalo Bill isn't even part of that community. He just thinks he is. So I wish there was like a little bit more clarification there. And I got it more when I was watching the supplements, but in the film on its own, I think there like, if there was one thing I would change about it. And probably if there was one thing that Jonathan Demme could change, it would also be that, because he was really surprised by the backlash from the LGBT community. And nobody like recognized that when they were working on the film until like afterwards, and then they're like, oh. I have a tendency to say that like a lot of characters and certain plot lines are really interesting, but then I don't like further explain why I think they're interesting. I was literally about to say that the characters are interesting, but it's very character based. It's really not so much about the crimes, it's about the people. It's not about Buffalo Bill's killings, it's about him and his psyche. And as someone who is into psychology, I really like the inclusion of, having that psychological aspect. I like the inclusion of horror, of sort of an investigation, a detective story, of the psychological aspects, all of that together, and sort of thriller as well. All of those just work really well, and I'm glad that all of those genres are included in the story. I don't think it would work the same if any of them were to overpower the others. And really, it's a terrifying film. And I didn't realize that until after the movie was over and it was like on the main menu, and I was just like thinking about it, and then of the spine of this, where, yeah, right here, like right there, it's like the face of the moth thing. It freaks me out. I don't like it. It's so creepy. And I think lastly, for The Silence of the Lambs, I'll just mention that I like the contrast and the dynamic between the characters of Hannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill. They're both supposed to be like these bad guys, but they're so different, and they're both killers, but they're so different, because Hannibal Lecter is like charming, and you kind of almost like him. He's intelligent, and he's just willing to like have a conversation with you, and also I think he has a way of being able to get things out of you without you like fully realizing it. I'm saying that as if like we're all talking to Hannibal Lecter. But like he can be so clever about it, and you may not realize like the information that he really is getting out of somebody. And Buffalo Bill is just like deranged and disturbed. And you find out a little bit more about his like backstory with what Dr. Lecter says, but it like creates a little bit of sympathy, but also like not, because it is sympathy. Not that I like feel bad for him as much as I'm just like so sad that it could have been a different way, because I really think that Hannibal Lecter is the kind of like bad guy, criminal, villain, sociopath who is he really a sociopath though? Oh my god, I'm getting too like psychoanalytical here. But oh my god, what was I saying? Oh, but he's like really the kind of character, like that's just the way that he is. And I think if Buffalo Bill had been raised differently, or just had his childhood maybe gone a little bit differently, had certain traits not be nurtured or be nurtured, depending, because I just think this is what's happened. He's sort of been like made a criminal or a bad guy, or whatever you want to categorize him as. I think it's really out of certain traits being nurtured, or possibly things being neglected in his life. And this is the way that he's dealing with it. And he's definitely having an identity crisis, and it's causing all this terror. Oh, okay. Moving on to the next one. See, I'm only going to be able to talk about like 2 films in this video, because I'm going to run out of time, because my like camera cuts off at a certain time. So hopefully I wasn't too all over the place with that. I really, when I'm speaking, I really get caught up in my wording, which is why I'm constantly saying I think I write better comments than I do when I'm speaking, especially because I like feel the pressure when I hit record, which is stupid because sometimes I'll be like practicing and like I'll try to go over it first so that I don't have any idea of what I'm going to say when I'm actually recording a video. And then I say it way better when I was just practicing and wasn't recording myself. And that upsets me. Anyway, moving on. Next is Rebecca. This is from 1940, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. This photo is like a little bit blurry anyway, but I know that my focus isn't the greatest. And this is spine number 135. I'm so glad these are both titles that were out of print and now are available again. And they both have 2 discs, which means that they have a lot of supplements. And I just watched Rebecca last night. Yeah. And I hadn't seen this since my junior year of high school, which I don't know why I tell you like what year of high school I was in. That would have been 2011. Here I also have The Book of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is actually one of my favorite books, and I got Rebecca, the movie, because I felt like rereading this lately, which I thought watching the movie was the next best thing. Wrong, because it made me want to read the book again even more. So I'm going to try to make that happen. We'll see. Anyway, Rebecca, the film. I like it and I don't like it. Like, it's probably in the middle in terms of my favorite Hitchcock films. I think the lighting is really great and really like menacing because Mrs. Danvers is like a hard character to really say that she's like a bad guy or the villain of the film, but she kind of is. And Rebecca kind of is too, even though she's not even alive. But the lighting, particularly on the eyes, is really noticeable and just makes things more suspenseful, I think. Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense. Obviously, the ending of the story is changed in the film because in the book, Maxim actually did like murder Rebecca, and you can't be rooting for the bad guy. You can't be rooting for a murderer in classic Hollywood. So of course it's changed and it makes it seem like Rebecca knew that Maxim would kill her and she was okay with that because she actually had cancer, which I'm very sure is not true in the book. Again, I have to like refresh my memory with the specific details from the book. So yeah, I'm actually really going to try to make this reread happen. I think Rebecca is there I go again, saying that things are interesting, but it is an interesting story because the main character doesn't even have a name, and you very much get to know her, but because of her body language, particularly in the film, of course. How many times have I said particularly in this video so far? Like 5, right? But with her body language, obviously you can see that with a film, and the way that she may like stammer her words or, not say something and feel like this, I guess. Like want to, but not quite sure the words to say, or is fearful of the outcome. And it frustrates me so much that she's trying to like live up to Rebecca's name, and Maxim like literally should just tell her that he never loved Rebecca. Like, just tell her, because she thinks that her being the unnamed character, like she just thinks that Maxim wants her to be like Rebecca, and that's exactly what he doesn't want. And I just, like, so many problems would be solved if they just communicated better. Also, they're supposed to have, like, a big age difference, or, like, a noticeable age difference, and I really didn't see that with the actors. I'm not sure how old Laurence Olivier was when he was playing the role of Maxim, but I guess Joan Fontaine was, like, 21 when she got the role, which I like don't see at all. It's crazy because I look at like classic Hollywood actors and think that they look so much older than they actually were. And then I look at people like nowadays. I think people are just starting to look younger, because I look at some 20 something, I mean, like, I'm 23 and she was younger than me when she got that role, and she looks like 10 years older than me. I just can't. So anyway, there's supposed to be an age difference, but I just don't see it with the casting choices, and just from the perspective that we have now, I guess, of the way that people have evolved. I'm kind of glad, though, that it isn't super evident, because I would hate for her to actually look like too young and then have this weird, like, almost father-daughter, like, dynamic to their relationship. Like, that would be really bad. Like, I was thinking that Rebecca could be a great book to adapt again, and so then sort of have another film adaptation of it, you know, or a miniseries. But I wouldn't want the casting choices to be like too much of a difference. I wouldn't want that, like, you know, Lolita vibe, I guess. Although, I mean, Lolita's like 12, so that's obviously not gonna happen. I really do think, though, that Joan Fontaine was the perfect choice for the character, because I watched the one of the supplements was like searching for I, because since she's unnamed, it's just like I, because the way the narration is, it's like the first line of Rebecca is, "Last night I dreamed I went to Manderley again." So I is like the character's name. And so they did screen tests for other actresses who were auditioning and getting close to, like, you know, who their final choices were to play the role. And, like, Vivien Leigh was considered, mostly because Laurence Olivier, you know, petitioned for her to be in it, because they were in a relationship. And she would have been not good. Like, I mean, she would have been good, but just she's not good for the part. Like, she's a good actress, but she is not this character. And Joan Fontaine, I watched all the screen tests, and Joan Fontaine was the best, I thought. And I was like, I'm glad that she got the role. And also, that's something that I started to say with The Silence of the Lambs. Did I finish saying that? That, like, Jodie Foster was like, she wanted the role so badly, and I'm so glad that she ended up getting it. And she wanted to just be like the second choice, you know, any chance, if Michelle Pfeiffer was considered to play the role, and then she, like, dropped out. And also, like, Gene Hackman was supposed to be the director of The Silence of the Lambs, and then he thought it was, like, too gruesome, couldn't do it. And yeah, I'm just, it's something that I'm glad that Jodie Foster, like, you know, campaigned for herself and ended up getting the role. And I'm glad that Joan Fontaine, she wasn't really known as, like, a bookable, is that the word? Bookable actress, bankable actress at the time. And I'm sure that this is a role that, like, changed her career. I also really liked, my favorite supplement on it is, and is there a commentary? I didn't watch with the commentary. Most of the Criterion releases have a commentary, so I just assume that all of them do. But my favorite supplement, I'm going to see if I can find out what it's called, but it was about Daphne du Maurier. Yeah, okay, Daphne du Maurier, In the Footsteps of Rebecca, which is a 2016 French television documentary. And I learned so much about Daphne du Maurier, and I've never really, it's not that I didn't have an interest in her as an author, as a person, it's just she's not an author that I've really looked into. And apparently she, like, felt like she had this, like, boy inside of her that she like had an alter ego of, and he had a name, Eric, I think. I don't remember specifically, but yeah, and that was weird. And then she was also, like, really found herself attracted to women, and Rebecca, the character of Rebecca, is a sort of representation of one of the women that she sort of fell for. And I just, like, didn't know that at all about Daphne du Maurier, especially because she was married to a guy and had children. And so I'm just like, was Daphne du Maurier, like, bisexual? Like, I want to know more about her feelings towards her husband and like guys, because so much of the documentary like talked about her attraction to women. And I've also read My Cousin Rachel and the Don't Look Now and Other Stories collection by her. And I think, like, especially because I want to reread Rebecca, like, it's hard for me not to think of the way that she wrote her female characters, and knowing that a lot of them are either representations of her. Oh yeah, it's also her. She's Rebecca. Wait, am I mixing this up? Because she doesn't want Rebecca to come back. That was what one of the parts was. But she like personifies herself in certain characters, as well as puts is inspired by people that she knew in real life for characters of her books and stories. Oh my god. So I know that I'm talking about like Daphne du Maurier a lot and the supplements and stuff, but these aren't supposed to be like reviews when I'm talking about the movies. I'm really just talking about these specific, I mean, I am talking about like this specific release because it has the supplements and things like that. Unfortunately, like I liked the film, but I do have to say I was a little disappointed. It spent a lot of time too, like in the beginning, like with Maxim and the character of I, like sort of like courting each other. Yeah. I don't, I knew about the sort of, miniature, shots and the special effects. That was another supplement that I really liked, talking about the special effects of the film and how it was really supposed to like blend in. You weren't supposed to notice them in a kind of film that was made in classic Golden Age Hollywood era. And so hearing about that was really interesting, and it was something I knew about a little bit, but I got more information about. Actually, you know what? I just looked at the back again and was reminded of other supplements. I just think that this has really good supplements. There was a conversation between two women who, I think they're like kind of film critics or something. I'm sorry, I don't remember their exact like titles. But that was funny. That was funny. I liked it. And just like hearing other people's perspectives on a story is interesting. I overuse the word interesting. And then another supplement that I actually haven't gone through is there are 3 different versions of Rebecca that they did like on the radio shows of Rebecca. And so that I'm looking forward to, but that would have taken too long last night. So I am putting it off for another day. And I think that's all I have to say about Rebecca. So this is part 1 of I don't know how many videos of me discussing the Criterion films that I've bought during the Barnes & Noble sales from July and from this month. I'm not going to get any more Criterions this sale. So look forward to that. Thank you for watching, and leave a comment, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.